Well, we are continuing with a series that we're doing for July. We're talking about the religions of the world. And one of the reasons I like to do these talks from time to time is partly because of something that happened back in 2007. Thursday, July 12th, 2007 was a historic day for the government of the United States. For the first time in the history of this country, a Hindu was invited to lead the morning invocation in the United States Senate. It's kind of a big deal for the person that gets to do that. The chaplain's name was Rajan Zed. Do I have a picture of him up here? I don't. Okay. I thought I had one. Must have been in the back of my mind. I was going to, but I forgot. Well, Rajan Zed is from Reno, Nevada. And again, as I said, this is a big day for him. He's being introduced by the presiding senator, and as he steps up to the microphone, people in the spectator area start yelling and trying to drown him out. Apparently, there was a group of Christian extremists who heard that he was going to be there, and they decided to make a special trip just to show up and show them a little bit of their Christian love. They tried to shout him down, and they were saying things like, "Lord Jesus, forgive us, Father, for allowing a prayer of the wicked, which is an abomination in your sight." Now, to the credit of the United States Senate, they quickly rounded them up. The sergeant at arms removed them from the building. The opening prayer went on as planned. Now, these protesters were from a group called Operation Save America. Later that day, they issued a press release. Guess what they claimed? That they were the ones who were being persecuted, that their religious liberty was being stepped on and their First Amendment rights were being denied. Here's a quote from the press release. They said, "The Senate was opened with a Hindu prayer placing the false god of Hinduism on a level playing field with the one true God, Jesus Christ. This would never have been allowed by our founding fathers." Yeah. I cringe when I hear about stuff like this. I mean, it's almost embarrassing, especially when these things get international press coverage, because it just makes us look so bad. You know, Mahatma Gandhi, probably the best known Hindu in the history of the world, he's been quoted as saying this. He said, "I like your Christ, I do not like your Christians. Your Christians are so unlike your Christ." And some people feel bent on proving it, unfortunately. Which is why we're doing this series on the religions of the world, because we want to show the world something different, that we can embrace, that we can understand, that we can do more than just tolerate, that we can actually meet these other cultures and religions on a deeper level. You know, America is a country that's made up of all sorts of different religions, and in unity we want to promote understanding. Now, having said that, as the title of today's talk acknowledges, when it comes to Hinduism, it's complicated. And it is. The reason it's complicated is because there isn't really a single monolithic religion that you can call Hindu or Hinduism. Now, here's a quote from Wikipedia. "Scholars regard Hinduism as a fusion or synthesis of various Indian cultures and traditions with diverse roots and no founder." And there are many different gods in Hindu traditions. I think I've got a picture up here of 8 of them. 8 of the different gods that you can find in the different Hindu cultures and traditions. And those different cultures and traditions, different locations throughout India, they may have a favorite. They may have a favorite god, but the mythology has much in common. For example, the one at the top left over here, that's the god that's known as Brahma, who's regarded as the creator by all these different groups. And the gods are similar to what we find in Greece. In the Greek pantheon of gods, they all have these different distinct personalities. They have some quirks and even some human-like flaws. But it would be wrong to categorically say that all Hindu traditions, all of them together, are polytheistic or anything like that, because these different deities, these different gods, are often regarded as representing different aspects of a oneness, of an ultimate reality that they call Brahman. A little bit different from Brahma. Brahman is the name they use for the ultimate reality, the infinite, without form, and beyond human thought. So this ultimate reality, and this should sound familiar to us, this ultimate reality becomes manifest to us in lots of different ways. And so in Hindu culture, you find different images for these different manifestations, but I think it's okay to regard them simply as different aspects of the one. I think it's a useful and accurate way to understand it. Another teaching that's common among the different Hindu traditions is that this ultimate reality, this one, this Brahman, manifests in every individual in the form of what they call Atman. Atman, which can be loosely defined as soul, or perhaps we could say the true self. A saying that they have in the Hindu traditions is that Brahman is Atman and Atman is Brahman. Now that's not so foreign to us here in Unity, is it? Because we often refer to the divinity of humankind, or we say the Christ within. Essentially the same idea. We're kind of working towards the same thing. It may be complicated, but it isn't anything we're not familiar with once we get into it, once we dig a little bit, and once we're willing to meet it on a little deeper level. Now earlier I had mentioned that Mahatma Gandhi was a devout Hindu. And people say that Gandhi was powerful, and I'll agree with them. He accomplished something very powerful by peacefully persuading the English to give India independence. It's kind of powerful, isn't it? It's a pretty big deal. But Gandhi would say that whatever power he seemed to possess that helped him work in the political world was derived from what he called his experiments in the spiritual field. Very humble man. And from his experiments in the spiritual field, he reached the conclusion that when it comes to spiritual truth, there's a particular Hindu scripture that he considered to be his primary source. This wonderful book of poems called the Bhagavad Gita. Let's see if I have the quote up here from Gandhi. Let's go to the next one. That's it. Next one. Do I have another one? Okay. Bhagavad Gita. That's what it means. Song of the Blessed One, Song of God. I don't have the Gandhi quote. I think what I did was I prepared a set of slides, and I must have saved it wrong because I thought I had this whole quote up here, but I'm just going to have to read it to you now. So here we go. Here's what he said about the Bhagavad Gita. He said, "When doubts haunt me, when disappointments stare me in the face, and I see not one ray of hope on the horizon, I turn to the Bhagavad Gita and I find a verse to comfort me, and I immediately begin to smile in the midst of overwhelming sorrow. Those who meditate on the Gita will derive fresh joy and new meaning from it every day." So he really liked it. He really liked it. That was his go-to source. Again, this is probably the best-known Hindu scripture outside of India. I dare say, how many of you have heard of the Bhagavad Gita? Most folks who have, yeah. Any study of world religions, this is one that you hear about. Song of the Blessed One, the Song of God. It's old. It goes back to probably around the 4th century BCE. And like a lot of ancient scriptures, the author here is unknown. And the Gita is just a small part of this huge epic poem that's called the Mahabharata, much larger bit of Hindu scripture. Now here's the real paradox here, okay? Gandhi loved the Gita. Gandhi's life was devoted to peace and nonviolence. Guess what the Gita is all about? War. It's the story of a huge battle that's about to take place between two old royal families in India. They're related to each other. They're known as the Pandavas and the Kauravas. This is a dysfunctional family tale, folks, which just goes to show you that they go way, way, way back. So the main characters in this story are Arjuna and Krishna. I dare say you probably know the name Krishna. Arjuna is a human being. He's a master archer. He's part of the Pandava clan. That means he's part of the warrior caste. Krishna is his chariot driver, and he also happens to be the god Vishnu in human form. Now, this is the story where Krishna comes from. This is where we get Krishna. So Arjuna, understandably, doesn't want to go through with this battle because it means he's going to be killing his relatives and even perhaps some of his teachers over the years. So he asks Krishna, his chariot driver, to take him out into the middle of the land that stands between these two massed armies. And this is where Krishna, throughout the course of this poem, tries to persuade Arjuna into doing his duty. They're between these armies, poised for battle. The armies are ready to charge. And Krishna starts talking about stuff like life and deathlessness and duty and non-attachment and true love and spiritual practice and the true self and the inconceivable depths of reality, okay? Again, Arjuna is there literally balanced on the edge of life and death. I guess that's one way to guarantee that he's going to pay attention to what Krishna has to say, because this is all about the ultimate question. The great matter, life and death. To be or not to be, which in a few moments out on that battlefield is going to be a reality. Krishna has no easy answers. He clearly seems to be saying that in the face of a just war, when the forces of greed and anger are attacking, we have an obvious duty to act, to fight back. And at the same time, you can read the Gita as saying that nonviolence is the highest course of action. I told you it was complicated. The great thing about the Gita is that you can read it either way or both at the same time. If it sounds like I'm saying you can have your cake and eat it too, that's what I'm saying. We've all seen in life that sometimes the best choice is nonviolence. Sometimes you have to fight. If the entire world would have simply stepped back and let Hitler complete his final solution, the world would have been his willing accomplice. There's no moral high ground in allowing a psychotic killer to destroy millions of people just because we want to be in some abstract state that we call nonviolence. So ultimately, the Gita isn't about choosing violence or nonviolence. There's a much broader question being addressed here. It's about how to live. That's what it's getting at. Gandhi called it an allegory. And for him, all the talk about war was about the battle that goes on in the heart of every individual. That's how he looked at it. It's a metaphor about what's going on in consciousness. In order to meet the circumstances during his life and times, Gandhi constructed a well-defined path of nonviolence that worked very well. In order to meet the circumstances during the life and times of Arjuna, it became necessary for him to fight the battle. The big question is, how do we find the wisdom to discern which course to take in doing that, and then the courage to know that it's right and to actually do it? How then shall we live? That's the question. The Gita is worth reading if you haven't, and I especially recommend a translation by Stephen Mitchell. It's the one that I use. He has an introduction and a commentary in there. And then he includes an essay, this wonderful essay that was written by Gandhi where he gives his interpretation of the poem. So that's why I recommend that little volume. It's a good translation, it's accessible, it's easy to read, and it has a lot more interesting material. You know, the answer to this question, how should I live, it doesn't come to us in the form of a step-by-step self-help book. That's not what the Gita is, and that's a good thing because I think we have enough of that stuff out there. You know what I'm talking about, right? You get the book, or you go to the workshop, and they promise that you're going to transform your life in 5 easy steps, preferably over the weekend, without having to lift a finger or think a thought, and you're all done and ready to go back to work on Monday. Doesn't work that way, and personally I'm a little bit concerned that as a culture we're gradually losing touch with the wisdom traditions of the world, becoming obsessed with shallow and sensational things and demanding easy answers that don't require us to think. I think the Gita demands more of us. The Gita gives a different, more complex and more nuanced answer to the question of how should we live, and I think there's one verse in there that can really sum it all up. It says, "You have a right to your actions, but never to your actions' fruits. Act for the action's sake, and do not be attached to inaction." Interesting. And that's in the handout in your bulletin. And I think we can restate that in 2 words. Let go. Let go. And then we spend the rest of our lives working on exactly how we're going to do that. We can do it through a number of different ways. We can do it through practicing wisdom and knowledge. We can do it through love and devotion. We can do it through action in the outer world, or we can do it through meditation, and we can do it through physical concentration. 4 different ways that we can go about practicing in order to know how to let go. And I think maybe an even easier way of saying it, an easy way to talk about those 4 different ways of doing it is this: head, heart, outer action, and inner action. Head, heart, outer action, and inner action. And incidentally, the last one there about inner action, meditation, physical confrontation, that's the one that we know in this country as yoga. When we use the word yoga in this country and people are going to a yoga class, they are practicing the physical discipline, the inner physical concentration. It's only one of 4 paths that the different Hindu traditions have come up with in order to learn how to let go, how to discern, how to deal with that question of how then should we live. Different practices, and yet they're all valid, and they all seem to get along. You know, that's the real genius of the Gita. Krishna isn't telling Arjuna the meaning of life, because consider that it might be a little bit different for each of us, right? He's not telling Arjuna the meaning of life. He isn't saying that there is this one monolithic big truth, capital T, out there that applies to everyone in every situation. Let go is going to mean different things in different situations. In his commentary to the book, the author who did the translation, Stephen Mitchell, he says that the Gita is not a systematic manual. It's a poem. And as such, it can offer something of value to students at any level. So, if you don't understand what it means to let go, it offers multiple examples of what that looks like. If you don't know how to let go, it offers multiple ways to go about practicing that. If one way doesn't work for you, there may be another one that's better suited to your strengths and preferences, or maybe a combination of one of those 4 ways or more. Gandhi took away one thing. We're all free to work with something else. So, I hope this offers a little better understanding and maybe some clarity about the depth and the breadth of what we call Hinduism. We've just barely scratched the surface, which is about all we can do here in 20 minutes, which means the rest is up to you. So we've given you some resources in the bulletin if you want to continue to dig into this further. That's enough today on Hinduism. We're going to go on to a real easy one next week. I'm calling it Basic Islam. See you then.